potential problems?
Senator, it will depend on the wallet consumer protection, the same way that today you have different consumer protections and services offered by different financial institutions and others. So, and I believe that it will be the role of the Libra Association to ensure that there's proper education so that consumers can make informed choices.
Well, I think the point here is that despite having legal and technical background in this room, this is a difficult question to answer. You posited that they would likely be using an American wallet, but if they were using a wallet from another country, that complicates the answer. This is a real challenge, and Arizonans deserve answers on what rights they would have as consumers and how they would use them. I also have some national security concerns. Despite granting anonymity, traditional cryptocurrencies are not the first choice of drug cartels, terrorists, and human traffickers because cryptocurrencies aren't very easy to use. But Libra is not a cryptocurrency. It's a digital currency that promises both anonymity and ease of use, which raises concerns about its potential exploitation for illicit purposes. I'm concerned that drug cartels and human traffickers, major problems, of course, in Arizona and border regions, may try and use Libra to finance their operations along our southern border. Your testimony says that you'll comply with the rules set by the Office of Foreign Assets Control with respect to financial sanctions. But if a drug cartel or one of its sanctioned persons attempts to complete a transaction using Libra, would you comply with OFAC policy, or would you allow a drug cartel transaction to be added to the ledger?
Senator, first of all, Libra is not anonymous, so we will have an AML program, and as far as the Calibra wallet is concerned, we will have full KYC and AML programs. As a result, those types of activities will be very difficult to conduct on this network, and you have my commitment that we will take the time before launch to ensure that the network and the proper measures are taken to avoid this network to be used for other purposes than it was designed for.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, my time's expired. This is just a proposal, but folks in my state are concerned and we need better answers. So I look forward to working with you in the committee on this. I yield back.
Thank you. Senator Cotton.
Mr. Marcus, thank you for your appearance and your testimony. Your CEO, in testimony before Congress, referred to Silicon Valley as an extremely left-wing place. That's why so many center-right voices have concerns about censorship on platforms like Facebook, but also Twitter and Google and so forth. I worry about the possibility that a digital wallet and digital currency like Libra could extend that into the payment system. There is reason to worry about that because Democratic members of this committee have made it a habit of contacting major financial institutions and encouraging them not to do business with, say, gun manufacturers or with government contractors who serve ICE or the Customs and Border Patrol. What safeguards, if any, will Libra have to ensure that you treat on par people with views that may be disfavored in an extremely left-wing place like Silicon Valley?
I appreciate your question, Senator, and you're right that Silicon Valley tends to have a bias, but I want to reaffirm that Facebook is a technology company where ideas across the political spectrum are welcome and treated equally. And as far as Calibra and the Calibra wallet is concerned, we wanted to ensure that people, as long as they have a legitimate use of the product, can do what they want with their money. Of course, there are some restrictions and regulated products, but my commitment to you is we will be thoughtful in writing those policies, and we'll be happy to follow up with you when we get closer to finalizing those policies.
So that doesn't sound like much safeguard to me, other than a commitment before you come into pressure from Democrats. And just wait till tomorrow, till you go before the House Financial Services Committee. If you think the Democrats on this committee have hounded banks, wait until you see what you're in for over there. I mean, how do we know? So a federally licensed firearm dealer wants to sell firearms at a gun show, or maybe a neighbor wants to sell a shotgun to his neighbor, or a Christian baker wants to practice his faith when he bakes his cake, or someone wants to pay a subscription to, say, Breitbart instead of the New York Times. What confidence can people who have center-right views have that Libra is going to be available to them on an equal basis as those who want to shut down gun retailers or shut down oil pipelines or government contractors who are working with immigration and customs enforcement?
Senator, firearms, for instance, are a regulated product. They're already regulated and treated as such on the Facebook platform. And I know it's a complicated issue. And when it comes to writing this policy, again, I'm committing that we will be very thoughtful. I have to say that as far as I'm concerned personally, I believe that we should only get in the way in very exceptional cases and by being thoughtful of getting in the way of people doing what they want with their money as long as it's lawful. But we also need to be thoughtful in how we write those policies.
Well, thank you for that commitment, and I do hope we have transparency, because I assure you, you'll be getting letters from that side of the dais, to say nothing of the House Financial Service Committee Democrats, just like all the major banks on Wall Street have been getting those letters. And for that matter, your own workforce is going to bring that kind of pressure to bear on you as well. Let's shift gears in the time I have left. We've heard a lot of talk about money laundering this morning. It's a big problem. I share the concerns we've heard this morning. Money laundering is typically done by individuals engaged in criminal activities like drug trafficking, human trafficking, and so forth. There's also the question of sanctions. One of the advantages of having the world's reserve currency is that we have the ability to impose extremely effective worldwide sanctions, because most, if almost all, transactions are dealt with in dollars worldwide. Could you talk a little bit about how Libra would have an impact on the United States dollar as the reserve currency, and therefore on the United States government's ability to impose sanctions? This is different from money laundering about individuals. We're talking about sanctions on nation states, like, say, Iran, that is developing its own cryptocurrency and cracking down on others specifically to try to avoid sanctions.
Senator, I'm glad you brought this up, because I believe that if we don't lead in the space, others will. And the same way that we will end up having two internets and two different infrastructures, we will have two different financial systems and two different financial networks. And one will be out of reach of sanctions that are so effective in enforcing our foreign policy and preserving our national security. And this is why I believe that Libra is an alternative that consumers will have the ability to use with wallets that will de facto enforce the sanctions that are led by our national security apparatus and Treasury. So I actually believe that if we stay put, we're going to be in a situation in 10, 15 years where we're really going to have half of the world that is going to operate on, by the way, a blockchain-based technology that will be out of reach from our national security apparatus.
All right. Thank you.
Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Marcus, thank you for being here. So on cybersecurity, on foreign interference, on privacy, on extremism, on fake news, is it fair to say you're still working on solving those problems as a company?
Yes, Senator, we have a number of issues that we're hard at work solving.
So you're working on solving those problems. They are not fixed yet, correct?
Some of them are, and a lot deserve a lot more
fixed?
work. No, I'd say that some of the issues that we've had in the past.
Right. Cybersecurity, foreign interference, privacy, extremism, fake news. Which ones of those have you fixed?
Well, you know, for instance, Senator, the issue that happened back in the day with Cambridge Analytica cannot happen again.
Not which ones of you have you made significant progress. Have you fixed any of those?
Well, I'd say that all of them will always require a great deal of work.
So let's just pretend it's the two of us having a conversation. My question is this. What do you say to someone who says, maybe before you do a new thing, and an enormously important thing, you should go ahead and make sure you've got your own shop fixed? So what do you say to that?
Senator, I believe that the status quo is really a huge burden on so many people around the world when it comes to financial.
Hold on. You're making an argument for cryptocurrency generally. You're making an argument for this proposition generally. The question I have is, Facebook has a lot of problems. You guys have had a rough couple of years. And so the question is, why are you moving on to a new and challenging thing, other than the grandiosity of Silicon Valley, which causes you to get bored with your own thing and try to move into a new line of business? So the question is not, would it be great to eliminate credit card fees? The question is not, should the United States lead in this area? The question is, why Facebook? And why before you fixed your other stuff?
Senator, I believe it's important that we continue to innovate on behalf of the people we serve. And the same way that we've been able to bring communication prices down with our messaging app, because now anyone with a $40 smartphone can actually communicate for free with the world, we want to continue innovating on behalf of the very people we serve. And we hope that we can do the same thing for them when it comes to access to modern financial services.
Do you have specialized expertise with anti-money laundering, sanctions, prudential regulations, protecting financial information, preventing discrimination, and other violations of consumer financial laws?
Senator, I do, and my team does as well.
Not you personally. Does Facebook have that?
Senator, through the team that I've assembled, yes, now it does.
Within Facebook?
Senator,
within
about
the consortium.
Senator, within Libra, which is the subsidiary that it created, it has the proper know-how to
So you hired
operate
up for this?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. Does your consortium have bylaws?
Senator, the charter of the association is in the process of being ratified by its members, and it will be made public.
So that's a no?
Senator, when we launched the website and a white paper in June 18, we have guidelines, but the reason that we didn't want all the other members to sign an existing bylaw or charter is we wanted them to take part in writing it, because again, we don't want to control the network, and we think it's important that those decisions are made collegially with the other co-founding members.
So what I'm hearing, and they're terrified to talk about this publicly, is that members of the consortium actually have lots of questions too, similar to the questions that are being offered on this dais, and they have great reservations about moving forward, but they don't want to be left out because of Facebook's market power. And so how do you address the bigger question, not just the one that I asked earlier about you not having fixed your own shop before you move into currency, which seems just on the face of it to be nuts. How do you answer the question about size and power and the idea that lots of people out there think Facebook is already too big and too powerful, and now you're going to get into currency? So how do you address that question?
Senator, we answer that question with the very setup that we have at the Libra Association and the way that this network is not only governed, but the way that we will have to face tremendous competition on top of this network with other companies that already have a lot of existing financial accounts that are already KYC, that are already operating, that have trust. So you have companies like PayPal and others that will, of course, collaborate but compete with us.
I guess you haven't just, and I appreciate this, but you really haven't answered the most basic question of all, which is why in the world should Facebook, of all companies, given the last couple of years, do this?
Senator, because we have the ability and the means to innovate on behalf of the people we serve, and we shouldn't stand back and wait to do it. If we can help the very people that we want to serve, because we have the resources and the engineering talent, I believe we should.
Because of your size?
Senator, because of our resources and our engineering talent.
Because you're so big that you should get bigger.
That's not the point I was making, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Menendez. Excuse me, you're right. Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Mr. Marcus, I want to talk quickly back to some of the money laundering issues that I've got real concerns about. And I understand that Libra is committed to verify users and those kind of things, but for money laundering purposes, if you've got a worldwide issue and you've got partners all over the world, how are you going to get your partners to verify these third-party products, and how are we going to prevent this money laundering? I think I think that's a major concern. How are you going to deal with your partners?
Senator, first I want to commit that we will not launch until we've satisfied those concerns with Treasury and other regulators around the world in how the network is configured and it operates. But more practically, the way that the network is going to operate is that all the on and off ramps will be regulated and will have proper KYC and AML. As a result, activities such as money laundering, terrorism funding will have an opportunity to be monitored. And the intention here is really not for the efficacy of these programs to take a step back, quite the opposite. We believe that we can help improve the efficacy of these programs, and we'll work hard to make that happen because this is something that I care deeply about.
Well, I appreciate that. I do have some concerns about that because, as Senator Brown said in his earlier, we've seen Facebook run into problems in their platform time and time again on any number of issues. And I think Senator Brown's comment was it's just another learning experience. But at some point, if things continue, and especially with a currency like this, if all of a sudden this operates and you continue to see all manner of criminal activity and money laundering, at some point an innovative prosecutor is going to look across the table and say, you, sir, are contributing to this. You are an aider and abetter. Are you prepared for that down the road if you don't do your job and this currency is used as to facilitate human trafficking, drugs, fraud, things like that? Are you prepared for Facebook and all of your Libra and Libra users to be looked at as criminal defendants?
Senator, we're prepared to take the amount of time that will be required to ensure that those things don't happen and that we improve on the efficacy of these programs.
All right.
We really don't want this creation to be a tool for these types of activities. And this is why this time, before launching, we're taking so much time and sharing our plans early on and have started this long consultative phase.
And I didn't mean to imply by my question that you're intending to do that. I know that, but I also know there's unintended consequences. And if things don't go right, at some point, somebody's going to have to step up. So, but thank you for that. The other thing I want to talk about briefly is taxes and how some of this will be tax. As you know, the current IRS law treats digital currency as property, which means under current law, every single transaction or purchase made with Libra will be a taxable event. The transaction will be taxable. So many businesses in the current crypto space now help their customers comply with tax laws by submitting detailed list of transactions to both the IRS and the consumer, similar to how stockbrokers might send both a customer and the IRS a 1099-B. So does Facebook plan on recording and reporting all Libra transactions directly to the IRS and to consumers to ensure that they fulfill their tax requirements?
Senator, this is an important issue. And the way that we're approaching this is twofold. One is Libra, unlike other digital currencies out there, will not be volatile to the dollar. So as a result, the variations in prices between the dollar and Libra will be very, very minimal. But as far as the Calibra wallet is concerned, we will, of course, provide all tools to consumers so that they can report their taxes without the hassle of having to record all transactions on their own.
Well, but so do I understand you're saying that you'll provide that to the customer, but that you would not propose providing that to the Internal Revenue Service? Is that how I understand that you're just putting the burden on the consumer and the customer to comply with Internal Revenue Service regulations?
Senator, my understanding of this matter is that this is the decision that is in the hands of the IRS, and that today the IRS, is my understanding, that they require consumers to report. But we would be happy to work with the IRS to make it easier for consumers or to reach a de minimis determination for Libra and other digital currencies in order to avoid the burden for consumers.
All right. Well, I think that from the money laundering aspect, criminal activity, and the Internal Revenue Service are two big things that you got to hurdles to overcome. It's going to take some time to, I think, get past all of that. So, but thank you for your testimony and for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, now Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg once said that his motto was move fast and break things. Several of my colleagues have referred to it. I only have 5 minutes, which is not nearly enough time to list all the things that Facebook has broken. I've highlighted some of the poster behind me, and the underlying theme here, this is a company that does not think through the consequences of its actions. And with nearly 2.4 billion active users, when Facebook breaks something, it has serious consequences. So I've been listening in and out between the meetings I've had in my office, some of your testimony, Mr. Marcus, and basically the theme of your response to many of my colleagues, particularly on data privacy, is trust us. Well, trust is something you earn, and Facebook certainly hasn't earned it. So it's not enough to say that you will keep the Libra data separate. I'd like to know how exactly will you keep Libra data separate from your social media data?
Senator, thank you for your question. I want to also say that in the case of Libra, we're most definitely not moving fast. And I want to reiterate my commitments that we will not move to launch or to offer Libra as a currency or on Facebook's platform
We'll see
before.
if that happens. Just answer my question right now. How specifically are you going to keep the data separate?
So the way that we keep the Calibra data separate from the rest of Facebook is that actually within our infrastructure, we have separated the data from the rest of Facebook's infrastructure and data in order for it not to get commingled with the rest of the data.
Even though in your user agreement you say that you're going to may very well share aggregate data with Facebook.
Aggregate data that we may use on the Calibra wallet side, non-identifiable data to understand.
But that's the beginning of opening up the door. Let me ask you this. If there is a commingling of data, purposeful or not, can you commit to this committee and the public that you will notify users and the proper authorities within 48 hours?
Senator, I commit that we will naturally notify users that would have been affected by this, but first and foremost, we want to make sure that it never happens.
I know, but if it happens, I'm saying whether purposeful or not, things seem to happen at Facebook. Will you commit to notify both the users and the public within 48 hours of your finding of it?
Senator, I commit that we will inform users and the public if such thing happen within a reasonable time frame.
So that could mean a whole bunch of things. Let me ask you this. I have been the author and architect of many of the sanctions regimes we have leveled against rogue regimes, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, to mention some. Many of us are concerned about how those countries and how criminals can use Libra to evade U.S. sanctions or money laundering laws. Last year, the Treasury Department for the first time identified and published digital currency addresses associated with 2 Iranian-based individuals who helped exchange Bitcoin for Iranian cyber criminals that used ransomware to extort millions of U.S. dollars from over 200 victims. If Libra was used for a similar transaction, would the Libra Association, the group that validates Libra transactions, freeze the assets of such sanctioned individuals?
Senator, first, I really want to stress the fact that if we don't lead, others will. And as a result, the transactions that you highlighted and listed will happen on a network where we will have no jurisdiction and no reach and no ability to exert any control for national security purposes. As far as Libra is concerned, naturally, because Libra, despite the fact that it will be headquartered, will be registered with FinCEN, will collaborate, will have an AML program, and will ensure that on and off ramps are properly regulated. And as a result, those types of activities should be extremely hard.
But my core question is, having that individual identified to you, the type I just described, would you freeze the assets of such a sanctioned individual under your system?
Senator, the way that this would happen and the way that the system is currently contemplated, it would be the role of the big custodial wallets operating on top of the Libra network, like the Calibra wallet and many others, to block access for funds for those addresses, as well as all of the on and off ramps that would prevent those addresses to convert to cash.
Let me ask you one other question. I have a whole bunch of them, but I'll submit them for the record. This doesn't assuage my concerns as it relates to the very sanctions that we have worked on a bipartisan basis to pass. So, would the Libra Association, what would they do if U.S. regulators wanted to enforce sanctions on certain individuals, but other global regulators did not? How would the association determine which set of rules to comply with?
Senator, that's a really good question, and one that we're in active discussions with a number of regulators, including Treasury. And my understanding of this and the way that we're currently thinking about this is that actually the way to properly police and control the network is through one, the on and off ramps, and two, to all of the wallets that will be regulated.
I'm going to take you at your word that you're not going to act before you have all these questions resolved, because if not, what Libra could be is the Wild West of cryptocurrency, where money laundering criminals and countries seeking to avoid U.S. sanctions could be their resolve, and we just can't have that.
I agree, Senator.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Marcus. You know, one of the benefits of going last is you get to hear your colleagues' comments. So I'm going to make a couple comments I hadn't planned to make otherwise. Number one, Senator Kennedy rightfully pointed out Facebook's failings in the face of Russian interference in the 2016 elections. I know you're working hard to remedy it. I frankly wish the United States Congress was working to remedy it as well. We have a bill in this committee, bipartisan bill called the Deter Act, that would say to Putin or anybody else that wants to interfere in our 2020 elections that they will pay a certain and very high price. So I hope, Mr. Chairman, that we will move on that. We have to get to the bottom of 2016, but my goodness, we should be working on a bipartisan basis to protect our elections in 2020, and we have a means to do that. Secondly, I heard a hint of this whole idea that Facebook and other social media companies are conspiring against right-wing voices. In fact, 4 days ago, we had the President of the United States have what he called a social media summit at the White House, where he summoned some of the most right-wing, extreme social media voices and peddled this idea that the President's own Twitter account was somehow being blocked and limited. And yet, within the last 48 hours, we've seen what a grotesque lie that was. This is a president who just spewed forth all sorts of racist comments over the last 48 hours. And it does highlight the challenge social media companies have in trying to make sure that they monitor community standards to prevent incendiary comments that can cause harm or danger, and at the same time allow freedom of voices on the internet. So I hope we'll get away from this nonsense that we often hear from the President and others about this kind of biased censorship. And I hope we'll have more voices actually exercising their First Amendment rights to speak out against the President's racist comments. Third, real-time payments. I'm looking forward and enjoyed this discussion here. Every time the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Chairman Powell, has come before this committee and others, I've asked them why it is the United States government is so far behind our European partners and many others in real-time payments. The fact that we don't have a system in this country that can clear real-time payments is today costing millions of Americans billions of dollars, and they should accelerate their efforts and get it done. And I personally do not think we should hand that over to a consortium of the biggest banks in the country. So let's talk about the conversation here today specifically. I understand your point saying that whether you trust Facebook or don't trust Facebook, that's not a big issue with respect to the Libra Association. I have questions and concerns, and you've heard some today about the Libra Association itself. Because what's different from things like Bitcoin, the uncertainty around Bitcoin, the uncertainty of its value, the wild fluctuations, in my view, mean it's not going to be put into widespread use. Whereas the whole goal here is to have billions of people around the world using this new coin, right? I mean, that is the goal, is it not?
It's really to help the very people who don't have access to current financial services.
But the idea is billions of people, and because this is now going to be tied to other currencies and supposedly be more stable, it will be in very widespread use. So there are huge concerns because this, in my view, obviously has lots of questions that need to be vetted. And the organization itself, the Libra Association, you can say you don't have to trust Facebook, but you do have to trust the Libra Association. And they're doing something very different. They're creating a new currency that is intended to be used by billions of people. And I think there are lots of questions that you still need to answer regarding that structure. I mean, I think people will conjure up the James Bond movie and that organization Spectre. And unless you're really clear about how this is going to be a transparent association and be accountable in all the ways that have been discussed today, then it's not a question of whether people trust Facebook or not. It's a question of whether people trust this international, this organization, run by private companies. And my view is when you're talking about a world currency that's going to be potentially used by billions of people, I'm not sure that there's sufficient accountability that you could build into that system that would answer all the concerns. But I look forward to the continuing conversation.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Senator Kennedy's asked for a second round, and then Senator Brown and I will both go with another round of questioning, and I think that will be it. We may have another senator or two show up. So with that, Senator Kennedy.
Mr. Marcus, I want to follow up on Senator Cotton's concerns. And I think the basis for his concern is we can agree on this, I think, that Facebook is not really a company anymore. It's a country. I mean, you got 2.2 billion people that use it. I don't see anything in the documents that I've seen that would prevent the members of Calibra, once Libra is prevalent throughout the world, saying, you know, we don't believe in abortion rights. And we have the transaction data of all these people. So we're just going to say if you believe in abortion rights, you can't use Libra, or vice versa. And you could make that assessment on the basis of any person's position on socioeconomic issues. I think you need to address that. Let me ask you a question about, again, there's a big issue in trust here. In May of a couple of years ago, I think it was 2016, there was an article appeared that quoted news curators at Facebook. They were in charge of the trending news section. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, Senator.
Right. I don't think you have it anymore. But they testified that they had been instructed by the management of Facebook to suppress news stories of interest to conservative readers, even if they met the qualifications of trending. And they stated that they were told to suppress news stories about CPAC, Mitt Romney, Rand Paul, Lois Lerner, Scott Walker, Chris Kyle, Ted Cruz, articles from Newsmax, articles from the Washington Examiner. And one of the curators even kept a log. Is that true?
Senator, I wasn't part of that team, and I'm not aware of how it functioned, but that product doesn't exist anymore.
Okay. Well, the news curators also told that they were instructed to include in the trending news section articles from certain publications, whether they were true or not. And two of those publications were CNN and New York Times. Is that true?
Senator, again, I wasn't involved, and this was not my product team, and it might have happened even prior to my time. I do want to say, though, that Facebook really is a technology platform that is neutral when it
Right.
comes to.
I'm familiar with Facebook. Let me just ask one other question. The news curators said they were told by management not to ever put in an article in the trending news section about Facebook. Is that true?
Again, Senator, this was not my team, and I'm not aware.
Okay. Is there any data that Facebook has on its customers, if you will, that on principle Facebook wouldn't monetize?
Well, Senator, the way that the data is used on Facebook when it comes to monetization is enabling better ads, to serve better ads to people that are personalized.
I get that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I get that. But is there any data that on principle Facebook would say, we're not going to make money on this. This crosses the line. Have you ever thought about that?
Well, Senator, it's not about making money, but as far as Calibra is concerned, the commitment.
It's not about making money?
Senator, we don't typically look at data in a way that is to make money, is just to improve the service, including improving the quality of the ads that we serve.
Let me stop you now, Mr. Marcus. You're telling me that money is a secondary concern at Facebook? Don't you have shareholders?
Senator, we do, but I believe that it is important that we first and foremost serve our customers, and the way we've done it with messaging apps, notably, without monetizing them yet, is a testament to what we can do to lower costs for people when we have the opportunity.
All right, last question. I got 19 seconds here. I got to ask this, if this is true. Do you know these people? Sheryl Sandberg, Elliot Schrage, or Monica Bickert?
I do, Senator.
Okay. Is it true that Mr. Zuckerberg told them to meet several times and consider shutting down then-candidate Trump's Facebook website in 2016 because Mr. Zuckerberg disagreed with his views on immigration? Is that true?
Senator, I'm not aware.
You just don't know?
I do not know, Senator, but it would surprise me, but I'm not aware.
Okay. Last question, I promise. I've seen this description before, and I want your thoughts on it. If you and I interface on Facebook, they're really not just two participants. It's you, it's me, and it's Facebook. Is that an accurate description? That nothing's private?
Except on messaging platforms, notably on WhatsApp, that is fully end-to-end encrypted. In this case, it would be just the two of us, Senator.
Okay. And this really is my last one. If Libra catches on, and let's say 200 million people are using it, somebody is going to have the data on all of the financial transactions that those 200 million people have consummated, which is going to indicate what they're buying, what they're not buying, what their likes are, where they like to shop, just a treasure trove of information. You're telling me that nobody in Calibra is going to attempt to monetize that?
Senator, when it comes to the Libra Association, they will not have any personal identifiable data, and as a result, they will have no way to
Somebody will have the data. Who will have the data?
The wallets that will provide the services will have the data for their own wallets, and I can speak to.
So you're telling me nobody's going to monetize that data?
As far as the Calibra wallets, we don't intend to.
But isn't it the case that at some point, those consumers are going to be sent an email saying, do you care if we share your data, and the details are right here, click on this, and it's going to refer you to a 10-page, single-spaced disclaimer written by the lawyers in which you could hire a dead body and nobody would ever find it. And they're going to start doing it. Isn't that what's going to happen?
No, Senator.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Marcus, thank you for sitting here through this. I normally don't respond to uber partisan comments from colleagues, but I just wanted to just ask the Republican committee staff to let Senator Cotton know that every letter to Facebook from this committee, from any of us on this committee, has come, or at least from the committee have been jointly signed by Senator Crapo and me, and I think that's important to know. As you've seen, Mr. Marcus, is clear from this hearing that distrust of Facebook is a pretty universal feeling here. You heard Senator Kennedy say it. You heard Senator McSally. You heard on the Democratic side, Senator Smith and Van Hollen and Schatz and me and others. So that is an issue you need to deal with. And I want to just read back what you said to me about trust. You said, Senator, you heard it directly from Mark, and I will reiterate this, that trust is primordial. And I responded, I didn't hear it from Mark. And you said, trust is primordial. We've made the mistakes in the past. We've been working and then on. So I know what the word trust means. I know what the word primordial means. What the hell does that mean, that trust is primordial? That both senators, apparently you said, and apparently Mark Zuckerberg said, although we found no record that he said it, but I believe you if you said he said it. But what does it mean?
Senator, it means that we need to continually continue to do better in serving the customers and the users we're serving, and we will do what it takes to earn their trust, and that's definitely the case for as well for Libra and the Calibra wallet.
And this is the same Mark Zuckerberg that once called people who trust him with their data dumb, and the next word starting with an F I can't say in this committee. This is the same Mark Zuckerberg who said that I could even read what he says. 4,000 emails. I have over 4,000 emails, pictures, addresses. People just submitted it. I don't know why they trust me. And then he said dumb in a profanity. So why, I guess, and then I hear you quoting him and then you saying it yourself that trust is primordial. And the definition of primordial is from the beginning of time. And your biggest problem is that people don't trust you. So what am I to take from this?
That we need to continue working very hard to ensure that we are deserving of trust.
But why would you lead with trust is primordial? It's so much in your DNA that you can always trust us, but then just lay out one after another times that you deceived, undermined, betrayed that trust. Why, again, Senator Schatz said over and over, why, with all of your problems, should we trust you on something as important as a worldwide currency and the damage that can come from it?
Senator, this is why we've set up Libra the way we have, which is that we will not control it, and we will be one among 100 different participants that will govern over the network and the currency. And as a result, we will have to earn people's trust if we want them to use our products and services on top of the Libra network, because they'll have plenty of choice with established companies that have a lot of trust.
You trust us you trust us to believe that statement when you say one of 100, but you're the only one that has access to 2 billion people. And, you know, the George Orwell people, some people are created more equal than others. Why should we trust you when you keep talking about all the competition? There are 100 players, but nobody is like you as the preeminent player.
Senator, I do want to address this because I believe that there might be some misunderstanding on how the people on the Facebook wallet, the Calibra wallet, will have to onboard. We will not have the ability to onboard all people using our products automatically, naturally. We will not even use Facebook login. People will have to onboard, create a new account with Calibra, upload their government-issued ID, and as a result, there's going to be a lot of friction, and we will have to make very strong commitments so that people trust us, and we will have to honor those commitments for a very long period of time to earn people's trust, because while we do that, you will have other wallets that already have a number of customers that they can enable Libra for immediately, and we're not in that position. And as a result, we put ourselves in a position where we will have to work very hard to earn people's trust to use our products and services.
Pretty hard to trust when there is so little contrition responding to Senator Kennedy about the 2016 election, or what you've done to the media in this country, to journalism, and what you've done according to the United Nations in Myanmar. Pretty hard for us to trust you with with a worldwide currency that you're setting up in Switzerland?
Senator, I believe that the status quo is not working for so many people that it's time for new progress to happen in financial services, for those barriers for so many people that are left behind to be lower, and for costs for so many people to be also lower. And that's why we are deciding to take the lead on this and then relinquish this lead.
Mr. Chairman, I wish we could trust Facebook. It's pretty clear there's almost nobody in this committee that does. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. I'll ask my final round of questions right now. Mr. Marcus, I've stated in a number of our previous hearings that ensuring that individuals have real control over their data is critical. And the United States does not have, in my opinion, adequate assurances in its law. I talked about that with you in my first round of questions. I'm personally convinced that we need to, if we don't, well, we have a sectoral approach, as I indicated, and I think we need to have a more comprehensive, broad-based approach, at least for the basic rights. Europe in the GDPR does have such a law, the GDPR. That guarantees individuals with the right to information about the access to their personal data, which I believe means they should have access. They should be notified when their data is being collected, what data is being collected, and given rights right at that point to opt out or in, and there should be corresponding responsibilities. Does Libra and its associated third-party developers like Calibra, do they anticipate being captured under GDPR at this point in time?
Chairman, it will really depend on the jurisdiction of different wallets, but as far as the Calibra wallet is concerned, we will definitely have the highest standards when it comes to privacy, and as soon as the privacy policies and commitments are written, you have my commitment that we will share those with you.
All right, thank you. And let me get into that a little bit in the last part of my questions here. As I understand it, using the blockchain technology results in a limited amount of personal privacy or personal private data actually being collected. You've indicated that a person would have to provide their government-issued ID, and then I assume, and you just please correct me or help me understand this, from that point, Calibra would have their ID, that would know the basic set of facts that's on their government ID. And I assume that ID is, or that information is connected to some kind of a code data or something that's used in the blockchain. Is that correct?
No, Senator. Actually, the blockchain will not include personally identifiable data.
But would Calibra have the ability to connect a blockchain to the user of that blockchain?
Senator, it will depend on whether the transaction has been initiated from a Calibra customer or not.
Okay, and if it was initiated by a Calibra customer, would Calibra would then know the identity of the person using or engaging in that transaction in that blockchain?
Yes, Senator, because they would be using our product.
And what else would Calibra know in terms of what other data would Calibra be able to use if it wanted to?
Senator, the mindset in which we're establishing the product and the privacy of the product is that it will only collect the information that is required to offer the service, but also to keep accounts safe, which is, of course, really important when it comes to money, and especially because we will have strong customer protection programs. So we will need to protect accounts, and data, relevant data, is actually quite helpful in protecting consumers' accounts.
So tell me what some of that relevant data is. Does that mean that let's say it was a retail purchase, does that mean that the item purchased is a part of that data?
Senator, that would really depend, and I don't believe that we need that information, for instance, either for the purposes of securing accounts or other purposes.
So I've been told that the blockchain technology actually allows an enhancement of privacy protection. Do you believe that's the case, that the use of blockchain technology actually reduces the potential for the abuse of collecting data on individuals?
Senator, yes. Typically, it enables people to use software that they can run on their own, and as a result, they can be their own sovereign, if you will, of the data that is used. And then it's a question of choice for consumers. On one side, they can have consumer protections, and on the other, they can be self-sovereign. But there are opportunities with blockchain technology to enable people to own their own data.
So in comparison, leaving the Libra proposal out of the question now and just looking at the technology issue of blockchain technology versus, say, the current transactional technology that we use for credit card transactions or bank account transactions, check transactions, and what have you. If we were to see a move globally into use of blockchain technology for currency transactions, would that represent an opportunity to enhance personal privacy?
Senator, it can be if implemented the right way, yes.
All right. I'm going to want to learn a lot more about that. Maybe you could give me some of your information on that.
Thanks.
All right. Before we gavel close, I want to reiterate my belief that it's critically important that policymakers and regulators understand the rules of the road as this project continues to develop. To the extent that gaps within the existing U.S. authority become apparent, it's worth examining whether new or clarifying legislation is warranted to ensure that U.S. regulators are not unfairly being relegated to the sidelines in assessment and oversight of this project and others like it. That concludes the questioning for today's hearing. For senators who wish to submit questions for the record, those questions are due to the committee by Tuesday, July 23rd. Mr. Marcus, we ask that you respond to those questions as promptly as you can. And again, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
This hearing is adjourned.
Thank you, Chairman.